I'd like to talk to you about a better way to deploy process improvements using a technique that I refer to as practice slices. Now, people trump processes. And what I mean by that is a highly competent team is going to outperform a less competent team regardless of tools or practices. Now, I'm not trying to bash practices, but what I'm saying here is that when organizations invest in process improvement, what they're ultimately looking for is to raise the competency of their people. So think about what it would mean to your competitive advantage if you could increase the competency of your people faster than your competition. And one way to do that is through practice slices, as I'm going to explain here. So let me start with an analogy. We've known now for a long time that the best way to build and deploy complex software systems is to first break the problem down into chunks and then build and deploy it incrementally in slices. Now, this works because it gets product into the hands of the customer faster, where they can really get value, and they can provide feedback to the development team to make sure they stay on the right course. So if you think about it, if this works for building and deploying complex software systems, why wouldn't it work for building and deploying the practices we want our people to follow? So before I talk specifically about what a practice slice is, let me motivate this idea by first talking a little bit about what we've traditionally done with our practices. Now, our practices should represent the way we want our people to operate. But traditionally, personnel each day on the job face all kinds of situations. And so we can't possibly provide guidance in every specific situation. But what have we historically done? Well, there's two things that I've seen when I've gone into companies. Some organizations have tried to give this detailed, prescriptive, here's how we expect you to operate in these various situations. The problem with this is you end up with these very heavy documents that are not usable by human beings because they're so prescriptive and people can't even find what they need when they need it. Or they go to the other extreme where they give guidance that is so simple and trivial that it's like the first thing you learned when you were in software engineering in school, such as do requirements before design, do design before you code, do code before you test. And the reason that this kind of guidance doesn't help is because this isn't what practitioners need. What they really need is help in how to handle the difficult situations where they have to make trade-offs, decisions related to how much design before they code, how much testing before they release, and how to handle the difficult situations that arise when they have to make a decision related to things such as ambiguous requirements or a risk that comes up. This is where practice slices come into play. Think of a practice slice as one or more of those common situations or common scenarios that occurs in a particular context. We actually did this with a couple of my clients where we first just got a group of developers together and we talked about the common situations that happen. And then we prioritized them, and this is an important step because there's so many situations and a lot of them they don't need extra guidance with. But we prioritized them based on where are the ones that they really need help with. Where are the ones where they have some options and there's certain consequences to certain decisions. We prioritized them, we discussed the options and the consequences, we captured them, and then we trained them. And another important thing we did, we then simplified this by abstracting out the essential characteristics of these scenarios, and we then called those patterns. The patterns are simply an abstraction of the scenario for ease of training. We also put them into these little checklists that they could take back with them to their job and hang on the wall, and it would remind them when they had similar situations what their options and the potential consequences would be of the various possible decisions they could make. You know, I think it's important to understand what we were really doing through this process. We weren't creating new information. Through the process of gathering these scenarios, these practice slices as I call them, and then abstracting out the inessentials into these patterns, we were really capturing the knowledge that was the experienced people already had in the organization. Uh, some people believe that you can't speed up this learning process. But in fact, this is one way to transfer that knowledge, to raise the competency of your people faster by taking what your experienced people know and sharing it and communicating it to your less experienced people. There's a couple books I like to refer to that I think can help here. One of them is How We Decide by Jonah Lear. And the other one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Dan Connellman. And if you pick up these books, both of them, they have kind of very similar messages. And they're telling us that we can affect our learning process. And we can learn to recognize situations faster. And if you recognize the situations and you refresh the options and consequences, this is the way our experts acquire their knowledge and can make rapid decisions. And we can do this with our inexperienced people so that we can raise the competency of our personnel faster through this mechanism that I'm calling practice slices. If this idea if this idea resonates with you and you like it, you might also consider picking up my most recent book, 15 Fundamentals for Higher Performance in Software Development. In the book, I talk about this idea. I talk about scenarios. I mention a variety of scenarios that I've seen with a number of my clients and how we created the scenarios, we trained them, we abstracted out the patterns. I even have some pattern diagrams in there, and how we used them for training and for communicating. You can use the patterns I've seen or in your own training, or you can just use the idea to create your own patterns, have discussions with your people, figure out the common scenarios that happen, where are they having trouble, what are the options and consequences, capture it, abstract the keys, and use this to roll out your training with slices. This works. This is a more effective way to deploy process improvements. I hope this helps. Thanks. Practice slices and patterns is just one aspect of why I wrote the 15 fundamentals. If you want to learn more about what my motivation was for writing the entire book, Google Paul E McMahon and YouTube, and you will find a short 7-minute video talking about my general thought process on why I wrote this book. If you want to even get deeper into it, you'll find 2 longer videos of me talking to computer science students at Binghamton University in April of this year. The first one is about 28 minutes long, and I talk about a major problem the software engineering community faces, which was probably the biggest reason I wrote this book. And then there's another video, which is part 2 to that, where I talk about the solution. Thank you.